Hello everyone. I'm going to talk to you about encounters with police. I'm going to go into concealed carry, but right now I'm going to just start with the average person. So we're going to go into showing ID and how to exert your rights, what to expect from the police, and what you're required to do. And I'm even going to show you law, so you'll at least see a lot of the things that I'm talking about. Okay, so let's just say you're not carrying a handgun of any kind, and an officer says, "Hey, you, come here." All right. So I just want to go over detainment at this point. When an officer directs you to go to a specific place and stay there, or to come here, this is the beginning of what we call detainment. You're not free to leave. You're not free to go elsewhere because the officer has directed your movement. So when he says come here, it's the very beginnings of detainment. The first thing you should say is, am I being detained? Even though it's clear that you are, or at least it's implied, getting that yes or no goes a long way into establishing your situation regarding the police. Now, anytime you see a policeman or you interact with law enforcement, the very first thing you want to do is to end that encounter, to be honest. There's nothing good to come out of it. Even if you're hanging out with them, or you're shooting the breeze, or you show him something, he shows you something, just kind of show and tell or whatever, everything that law enforcement officer sees is looked at with the intent to prosecute. The question in his mind is always, is there anything illegal? Is there anything I can prosecute with? Is there anything that can initiate or extend an investigation? Which by default means a detainment. So, the goal is to make the encounter as short as possible, and it's not too hard to do. Okay, so let's say you come here, he says come here, and he says, alright, show me some ID. Now, do you have to show ID? If you're operating a motor vehicle, of course you have to show ID. Here's the Texas law. It says that you always carry your license with you when driving, and upon request, show it. The law says that the driver's license must be shown upon request. It doesn't say that there has to be any probable cause or any reasonable articulable suspicion or anything like that, which I think is way overused, and some people are a bit confused about what that means. If an officer is conducting any kind of investigation, he has reasonable articulable suspicion. He just doesn't have to tell you, because he doesn't answer to you. He answers to the judge, he answers to his magistrate, to the sheriff. He answers to a board, but he does not answer to you. So just keep that in mind. He doesn't have to tell you anything. And if he does tell you something, expect he's probably lying, or maybe he isn't, but he doesn't have to tell you the truth. Just remember that. If he stops you, it doesn't mean you're in trouble. It just means he's investigating. So being detained does not mean you're a criminal. It doesn't mean you violated the law. Even if people think that you're doing something wrong, it doesn't matter. You're just being detained, you're being questioned, you don't have to answer. So that's the next thing. If he asks you for your driver's license or for ID, and you're not driving a motor vehicle, you do not have to show it. But if he's conducting an investigation, part of his investigation requires identifying who he's talking with. That's just the nature of the investigation. And if he feels he needs to, and you don't show your identification, he will bring you into the station. He'll fingerprint you. He'll run your prints. He'll call any numbers that he can get. He'll try to figure out who you are, if he wants to, if it's important. And if it's not, he won't. So this is where you take a real gamble when you don't show identification and you're not operating a motor vehicle. Okay, so I advise just show your identification. I always advise that you limit your legal liability, and in showing identification, the only legal liability that you can have is if somebody else with the same exact identification, name, birthday, social, someone with all of that commits a crime somewhere that when he runs your name, he sees someone with the exact same identity as you did something. That's the only one, and that's so rare. The idea that someone could commit a crime, get caught with your identity, that's just incredible. And of course they're going to photograph him, and he'll have the exact same photograph. I mean, seriously. So I always recommend show identification and then say nothing more. You have the right to remain silent always. Detained, free to go, under arrest, it doesn't matter. You always have the right to remain silent, and I always say, except when you're asserting your right to not be searched, and we'll get to that in a second, you always have that right to remain silent. So he says, show some ID, and you consent, of course. And you show your ID, or you just tell him. You say, hey, this is my name, this is my birth date, and he goes and he runs your name. He's basically looking to see if they have any bad records, if you're a bad person or whatever. Trying to find out who you are. I recommend it. You don't have to. But you may end up spending a lot more time with that officer than you want, and time with an officer usually means more things for him to think he finds suspicion about. So anyhow, so there's the license issue, the legal requirements while you're driving, some fines. If you show up in court showing that you did have a valid license at the time of the citation, it will be waived in Texas for a $10 administrative fee. But just show it, so you don't have to go to court and spend all that time with the officer. And it's just my advice on that. Now here's the concealed carry laws. We're going to start getting into. Let me just think for a second. Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about detainment, and then we're going to go into what your responsibilities are with concealed carry. All right, so he detains you. He says, come here. That's enough for detainment. Okay, and you, just to make sure everything's clear, you say, am I detained? He doesn't have to answer you. If he doesn't, assume you're detained because he said, come here, or stand there. And then if he doesn't answer, the next question is obviously, am I free to go? If he says, no, you're not being detained, that's the same question, am I free to go? If he doesn't answer that, obviously he doesn't have to answer it, and so then you should assume then that you're not free to go, unless he says yes. So you're requesting your permission to leave. You're trying to end the encounter as soon as possible. Not that you have anything to hide. It's just, as cool as policemen are, it's not our life ambition to hang out with guys that are looking to incriminate. That's their job, to find incrimination and prosecute. So, or at least bring the evidence for prosecution. Okay, so let's say he just says no, or he doesn't answer. Okay, now if he walks away from you, does that mean you're free to go? Absolutely not. He has the right to go to his car, to utilize equipment, to go and investigate various items and people around the scene, and you're still not free to go. He said come here, or he said stand there, or he said sit, cross your legs, whatever it is. Any kind of movement command you should follow. You are detained, and therefore you have to follow the rules of detainment, which is to comply with what he says, and to remain silent, of course. That's what I recommend. So now let's say you're carrying. Okay, let's start with concealed carry, just because that's the preferred way. Criminals don't know about it, and it doesn't alarm the public, so you have fewer encounters with the police anyways. You concealed carry. The very first thing that you need to do is to tell the officer, I am CHL. New officers don't get scared by the word gun, and all officers recognize what that means. I am CHL, I am concealed carry, however you want to say it. And then his first response should be, where are you carrying, and where are your weapons? So, do you point to it? No, that's don't want sudden movements of your hands, and he's already got guns on his mind. So you simply say, on my right hip. There's only one gun, and it's on my right hip. Okay, so now he knows. He may then move to take it, and we'll go over the law. He can disarm you Actually, I can just show you right here in the table of contents. There's a whole section about disarmament. He can disarm you. I mean, and he should have the right to, because if you're a criminal and he's suspicious, well, the only other choice is to let somebody who's potentially a threat continue carrying. So yeah, he can disarm you. He can reach for you. He can grab your gun and he can take it away. He'll probably tell you to raise your hands, to put your arms in the air. I would make any of my movements nice and slow, and try not to spook him out too much. Just act normal. After he knows where the gun is, he may or may not go to take it. If he goes to grab it, let him. Okay, don't get in the way. If you put your hand in the way, that's a felony. If you grab his hand, it's a felony. If you push his hand with the back of your hand, it's a felony. These contacts with the officer are a felony. It's resisting arrest, it's resisting searches, which it kind of was resisting disarmament anyways. You don't want to physically resist an officer. Backing away, that's part of fleeing from an officer, impeding an investigation. You don't want any of those kinds of charges. You don't back away. If he starts to reach for you, slowly raise your hands into the air. Slow movements. If he says, okay, show me your, he doesn't take their weapon, he just says, show me your license. You'll produce, and I'm kind of skipping to it because it's in the law here, you'll produce both your driver's license, even though you're not operating a motor vehicle, and you'll produce your concealed carry license. Let's see, let me get this a little bit larger. Okay, so this right here, this section talking about arrests and searches, prevention of escape from custody, or if you're detained and things like that, all covered in this section. So let's see. He asks for your ID. You say it's in my front left pocket, so he knows exactly where you're going to start reaching. You move your arms slowly down to pull out both of those, the driver's license and the concealed carry permit. That's required. Once you're detained and you're carrying, it's required for you to obey when he says to produce those documents. So you produce those. Just like if you're operating a motor vehicle, it's required for you to produce the driver's license, no matter if you think you're committing a crime or not, or you think it's illegal or not for him to ask. You have to produce those things. Now, it is useful to always assert your right that I do not consent to searches, especially if he reaches for you. If he reaches for you, you don't back away to say, I do not consent to searches. And if it seems he doesn't understand, keep repeating it. Say it over and over again until you know he understands. So, he reaches for you. He might be putting you under arrest. He might be grabbing you. He might throw you on the ground. I mean, police officers can do that. They can throw you on the ground and hurt you. And no one likes that, but that is part of their powers of arrest. Throw you against a building. They can forcibly pull your arms to the back of your body. All those kinds of things. And some do that quite liberally. So I can't say I agree that that's really the best way, but criminals being the way they are, they're not going to just submit. They're not just going to submit by free will. Hey, would you put your arms behind your back? Some people would comply. Criminals don't. Some police just don't wait for that or allow the assumption that you'll comply. So anyhow, it's one of those things. If you disagree with the way a police officer acts, in the time when you're actually interacting with the police officer is not the time to voice your concerns. Stay silent and save it for the judge. Bring it before the judge. The officer will answer to the judge. So yeah, make him answer to the judge. If he was police brutality and he was just way out of line, make him answer for it. As far as the encounter itself, that's what we're talking about. So let's go into, let's see, I have a few sections I want to look at. The most popular would be the 30-06, or the 30.06. We affectionately call it the 30.06 law. It prescribes that any building that has a sign created in a certain way with specific words and specific sizes prevents you from entering with a concealed handgun. This is in Texas law. Might be a little different in some other states. Let me go to page 26. Let's see, 29, 26. Okay. So, there's the requirement to display your license in plain legalese 411.205. There's the seizure of the handgun. Now, the seizure being that they actually take it for possession, being slightly different than the authority to disarm, where they take it temporarily and then return it to you. And you can read the specifics on those. It's all in the law. So, do not assume he has to explain his position to you and get your consent to seize your weapon or to disarm you. He doesn't need consent. That's one of the things about being a law enforcement officer, is there isn't a whole lot of consent going on. I mean, you might think it's polite and nice to ask for consent, but that's just not the nature of their jobs. They don't have to ask for consent. They don't have to explain themselves. Okay, so let's move to, let's see, 30.6 is actually page 32. Let's see if I can move to that quickly. I'm just looking at specifics in the law so I can show and cite it to you. And I'm trying to move as quickly as I can to make sure I cover some of the more important points where I've seen amazing amounts of confusion on. And part of the reason why I'm so bothered about this level of confusion is that these things will most likely bring felonies. And I do not want to see my fellow citizens getting felonies for things that they're innocent, right? Sometimes the felony charges are dropped because of the circumstances, and the police department just maybe doesn't feel the case is strong enough. They don't really want to push it, but they can if they want. And don't risk it. I don't want to see anybody with once you get a felony, that's your life right there. Done. Felony done, okay? So, let's see, trespass. Okay, this is 30.6. That's what we affectionately call it. So, the idea is that if a sign is posted pursuant to section 30.06 Penal Code, basically this sign is the only, is one of the few things that limits a concealed carry holder from their carrying of a firearm. So, you look around before you enter a building, and if you see this sign, don't enter. You go back to your car, you put your handgun in concealed. It still has to be concealed. Even when you drive, it has to be concealed. Do not flash that thing and think, oh, people will respect this. They'll act better if they see you flash a gun. Yeah, do not flash your gun. It must be concealed in Texas law. There is no exception except for long guns. We're talking about handguns here. Long guns can be open carried. We're talking about handguns. So, it has to be in English and in Spanish. The sign is very unique. You should recognize it. Okay, so this is defined by the 30.06 law. Now we go on to, let's see, there's custody and escape. Don't try to leave. Don't say, and I heard someone say this, I'm going now, so if I'm being detained, then just stop me, because otherwise I'm not being detained. That's what he was saying. Oh, wow. Because the guy went, he said, am I being detained? The officer wouldn't answer. And so anyhow, in that particular case, they let him go. But that was actually unlawful to leave a detainment. And actually by letting him leave the detainment, the officer let the detainment end. But that was his choice. It's not something I would count on. Yeah, there's no reason for you to go to jail just because if you're not stopping me, then that's an escape right there. Running, leaving. Okay, so let's see. You're under arrest, you're under custody, under restraint, whatever the case may be. Keep in mind that you have to stay there until they let you go. Am I free to go, officer? That's the question you should ask. Now, disorderly conduct, I want to go over this because people have gone felonies for this and gone to jail for serious time, manslaughter, because of disorderly conduct. And the idea is they went out in the public and they sought to flex their rights, or actually just showing off what they can get away with. They made someone else angry. Okay, that's called disturbing the peace. Also, it's called disorderly conduct. They made someone else angry enough that the other person actually put them in a position where they felt like they had to defend their life. And it was actually premeditated. They knew that doing these actions would make the other person angry, and they were inciting an immediate breach of the peace, as the language here says. If you incite an immediate breach of the peace, and you have to use your firearm in self-defense, self-defense is no longer a defense to you. It's no longer a defense to you, because you actually forced the situation. It's as if you went into a mall and just started firing away. You are as liable because you are responsible. If you hadn't gone and tried to incite immediate breach of the peace, you wouldn't have been in that situation where you had to pull the gun. So this covers different things that are typically considered as disorderly conduct, whether you're carrying or not, concealed or not. So abusive language, profanity, swearing, and other language that might incite an immediate breach of the peace. The Muslim community, and you use language about Muhammad, okay? That's a breach of the peace right there, with language that, okay, so I think you get the picture. Offensive gestures, the middle finger, gestures like moving your certain body parts in certain ways. You breach the peace, you offend people, and whether you think that they should be offended or not, it doesn't matter. You've breached the peace, you've incited, you've done disorderly conduct right there, and you can be charged with disorderly conduct even if you're not carrying. Now, you are carrying a firearm, it's even worse, because, you know, with a firearm right there, if they get mad, right, and their temper flares out of control, and then they do and say things that get you mad and make your temper flare out of control, then you've got a firearm right there. So it's a bad situation, and the law does not allow for it. Chemical means, noxious, unreasonable odors. This applies to all of them. So, yeah, I'll let your imagination go wild on what kinds of things could do that. We're not just talking about CS gas and other chemical canisters. Abusing or threatening people in public places, being offensive, making lots of noise, yelling a lot, really, really loud yelling, things that get people concerned, get people riled up, fighting with people in public, discharging a firearm across the road, of course, showing your firearm in a manner calculated to alarm. That simply means, you know, homeless guy comes up to you and you want him to back off, right? Or you're worried about him like getting aggressive or something, and you show him your firearm. That is the manner calculated to alarm him. And yes, it'll get him to back down. You will turn around and walk the other way, and you may be safer for it. There may be less violence than if you hadn't shown it, but it's against the law. It's disorderly conduct. Okay, we're not calculating alarm. We're not breaching the peace, and that's really the biggest. If you can remember that the police are all about not breaching the peace. They're about preserving the peace. Everything you do should be in accordance with that. You know, you should. If an officer is wanting you to be cooperative, you don't have to, but you could say, hey, whatever I can do to help you to maintain the peace. And then, of course, it doesn't mean you're bound to everything he tells you, but it shows him that you're on his side, that you're not trying to break the peace. Okay, discharging on or across a public road, lewd, lawful purposes of entering property. This includes entering hotel rooms, looking into hotel rooms, even apartment buildings, doesn't matter. Some people don't quite realize, you know, in a hotel room, doors left open, don't peer in. You might glance or see something in there, but don't go looking. Stay away from that. So, premises of a hotel, looking into guest rooms that are not your own, through a window or an opening in the room, doesn't matter. These are all governed. Disorderly conduct. Let's see, looking into restrooms, shower stalls, where people expect privacy. They want privacy, they don't get privacy, they get mad, it disturbs the peace. You know? You may not think mad equals breaching the law, but it does. It's directly related right here. So you might be learning things beyond the concealed carry. Okay, so yeah, making lots of noise. Alright, now if you had reasonable fear of bodily injury, obviously it says you can do some of these things if if you discharged a firearm because you had fear of that, and even some of these other things that it talks about, there are exceptions and defenses for if you're acting in protection of someone else or you're in fear of something. There are some provisions for that. Okay, now we're going to skip the parts where it talks about these deadly weapons that are usually in connection, oftentimes in connection with concealed carry activities. Alright, so unlawfully carrying weapons, I do want to talk about if you are within your own house, even a trailer that you live in, recreational vehicle, in a boat, and you can have a handgun with you. Okay, you can't show it, but you can carry it if you own it. But you cannot have it in plain view, and you cannot be doing criminal activity. You can't be prohibited from it by being a felon, which I'm trying to help you to not be, and you can't be a member of a street gang. So, with those provisions, you can have it with you, and this includes driving through a school zone. Don't get out of your vehicle with it, but as long as it's not in view, you can drive through a school zone, pick up your kids, whatever the purpose is for you driving through the parking lot. Okay, so now it's important to understand when they talk about premise, they're talking about entering an actual building. So things that have to do with parking lots, things that are outside enclosed buildings are not considered premises and are not governed by these restrictions. So physical premises of schools and educational buildings and where they do their activities are all governed by this. You cannot have a gun on those. Also on places where they vote. Guess people don't like to vote when they know half a dozen people are standing around them are probably armed, right? Who did you vote for? Okay, so government courts and their offices, racetracks, secured areas at airports, and 1,000 feet of a death sentence. The day of the death sentence, of any death sentence being executed. Yeah, so they don't like to see guns close to people, where people are getting killed. Yeah, you can imagine why that is. So, alright. Now there's another section of the law where it covers things where, places where you should not be carrying if there's the display of the 30.06 sign, and that's in here in the 46.035, unlawful carrying of the handgun by the license holder. It indicates, of course, places where there are lots of alcohol being sold. It's all governed right here, 51% or more, and there's a sign unique for that type of place. We're talking bars. And then it covers other places, like when you got high school events, people get kind of charged about that, and obviously you don't want a charged person with a handgun unless you're participating in some event. Then there's correctional facilities. We don't want people armed in our prisons. And then hospitals licensed under Chapter 241. So special kind of hospitals, they'll have the 30.06 sign posted for there. Anywhere where they have 30.06 signs. It goes into amusement parks, churches, things like that. So anyhow, just wanted to kind of wrap it up as far as the encounter with the police. Hope this is really helping you to understand the proper way to deal with the police. I'm just going to sum it up here. That you meet the police, and they say, come here. And until they actually direct you to come here, until it seems like you're detained, you can assume you're not and just walk away. And I probably would say, hey, great to see you. Hope you have a great day, and bye. Okay. And this applies whether they're in uniform or not. So then they say, come here. You know you're detained. You establish you're detained. Am I detained? Am I free to go? When you see that it's a possibility you might be free to go. And if not, you stay silent. At this point, if you have a concealed handgun, you say I am CHL, and then you produce the ID upon identification and allow him to do whatever it is that he wants to do, pretty much. This is the commission of a crime, where you know it's a blatant violation of the crime. Let's rob a bank, you know. Obviously, you would not incriminate yourself by participating in illegal activities. But that's where you know it's illegal, where it's directly against the law, anyhow. So he, let's say he takes possession of the gun, he takes your ID, or if you're not concealed carry, he takes your name and your birth date. Okay, maybe you don't have your ID on you, you're not in a motor vehicle, and maybe you don't choose to show the driver's license if you're not a concealed carry. He runs that, basically. He asks you more questions. Where are you going? What are you doing? And at this point, from this point on, you're silent. You smile politely, no intimidating looks or staring or anything like that, you know, and you just wait. He asks his questions, and he'll realize that you're invoking your right to silence, especially if you're under detainment and you've allowed him to see your attempt to make that clear, whether or not you are. So let's see, I'm just going through this scenario. You and it's a rather simple one. You wait until he's done asking whatever questions he wants to go through, and eventually they'll stop asking if you're silent. They'll stop asking questions, and then if they just wait for a while and you just don't hear anything, you can say I'm free to go, right? And if they don't answer, you can wait some more. Am I free to go? They reach for you, and this is even if they reach to secure a weapon and they go to search you, you say I do not consent to searches, and you repeat that until you know they understand you. These are the few things that you say while you're encountering a police. Maybe he searches you, maybe he takes everything out of your pockets, maybe he takes the hat off your head. Okay, whatever he does, because you said I do not consent to searches, it won't be admissible in court, except for providing a few circumstances. If a dog is brought in and led around your car and gives an indication, even falsely, because sometimes the officer can cause the dog to indicate, but who cares? If he indicates, then they do have reasonable suspicion. They can search your car. If a dog indicates on your person, they can search you because of that indication. And then obviously you still assert your lack of consent to the search, but there's nothing you can do about that except take it to court. So then they finish their search, and maybe they ask you more questions. You stay silent. Finally they say, okay, you can go, you're free to go, or they'll arrest you and they take you to jail. It's as simple as that. It's one or the other. They'll either arrest you, keep detaining. They could detain you for hours if they want, so don't make them mad, don't piss them off. Don't assume that being silent is pissing off. It might make them mad, but it's your right, and it's one of those things that it's better to stay silent than, especially if you're mad, than to talk in an agitated or uncomfortable way and give them another reason to say, you seem uncomfortable, you know, I can hear it in your voice, or more of the signs they're looking for. The less you say, the better. So they let you go, say, all right, you're free to go, and then you head on your way. That's really the best you can do in a police encounter, and that's why I always avoid the police encounters as much as I can. I don't invite those things, and I hope this helps. So anyhow, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll talk to you guys later.